am Dominus Cinephile.
Welcome to my movie and TV series reviews, where I will provide honest opinions of the latest releases. If the movie or TV series is a hit or a miss, be sure to know I will inform you. But if the movie or series is trash, be also sure to know that I will trash the hell out of the movie. I am Dominus Cinephile.
And the movie on the review table today is the Hollywood film Another Man's Wife. Another Man's Wife is not just another glossy romantic thriller trying to imitate Indecent Proposal for a modern audience. It is a dark, emotionally charged story about desperation, temptation, manipulation, and the terrifying price people are willing to pay when life corners them with no escape. Directed by Black and starring Taye Diggs alongside Sidney Mitchell and Moritz J. Williams, the 2026 Peacock thriller throws viewers into a marriage slowly collapsing under financial ruin, illness, emotional pressure, and dangerous obsession. The film follows Sean and Maya Daniels, a struggling married couple drowning in debt after Sean loses his job while his mother battles an aggressive form of cancer that insurance refuses to cover. With their world falling apart and time running out, the couple attends an elite charity gala where they encounter Brendan Rhodes, a mysterious billionaire whose wealth, influence, and unsettling charm immediately shift the balance of their lives. What begins as a lifeline quickly turns into a psychological trap. Brendan offers them a massive payout capable of clearing their debts and saving Sean's mother's life. But the price attached to the offer threatens to destroy the very foundation of their marriage. As Maya becomes trapped in Brendan's manipulative web of emotional coercion, obsession, and control, Sean and Maya are forced into a brutal moral battle between survival and self-respect. Another Man's Wife is ultimately a would-be tense exploration of love under pressure, exposing how desperation can blur morality, corrupt trust, and turn human vulnerability into a weapon. The film asks one devastating question throughout its runtime. How much of your soul are you willing to sacrifice to save the people you love? Great synopsis, right? On paper, Another Man's Wife sounds like the kind of psychological romantic thriller that should leave audiences glued to the screen. A desperate couple, a manipulative billionaire, dangerous temptations, moral corruption, emotional tension, and life-altering consequences. The premise screams intensity, suspense, and layered drama. But here is the problem. A strong synopsis means absolutely nothing when the actual movie underneath it is painfully mediocre. So the real question becomes, does Another Man's Wife rise to the level of its gripping premise, or does it completely crash and burn under the weight of its own potential? The answer reveals itself almost immediately. I stumbled onto this movie while searching for something different to watch. I was tired of endless action scenes and brainless spectacle. I wanted a mature drama driven by sharp dialogue, emotional conflict, intrigue, and genuinely strong performances. Then I saw Taye Diggs in the cast and instantly thought, okay, this might actually be worth my time. That was a mistake I regretted very quickly. The very first scene already warns you that you are about to sit through a painfully uneven movie filled with weak, lifeless acting. We see Taye Diggs' character being interviewed, and to his credit, he actually shows up ready to work. He is calm, controlled, charismatic, and delivers his lines with the confidence of someone trying desperately to elevate the material. Unfortunately, the actress opposite him completely drains the life out of the scene. Her performance is so flat, slow, and emotionally empty that it instantly kills any momentum the movie is trying to build. There is no presence, no tension, no aura, no believable human emotion behind the dialogue. Every line sounds rehearsed 5 minutes before filming, like someone nervously reading off a teleprompter while trying not to forget the script. And honestly, the performance style immediately brings to mind the worst criticisms often thrown at some weaker Tyler Perry productions. Actors standing around delivering lifeless dialogue with blank expressions while the camera just rolls endlessly. Soulless performances, empty line delivery, characters who feel less like real people and more like exhausted actors forced to memorize dialogue they barely understand. That is the energy this movie gives off almost instantly. At a certain point, I genuinely had to pause and double-check whether Another Man's Wife was secretly a forgotten Tyler Perry production, because almost everything about this movie carries the exact same problems critics constantly complain about: weak storytelling, painfully artificial dialogue, melodramatic overacting, and performances from actors who look completely incapable of carrying emotional scenes convincingly. The movie constantly mistakes loud reactions for genuine drama. In its desperate attempt to manufacture tension and emotional conflict, the film repeatedly throws characters into scenes that make absolutely no logical or emotional sense. One of the clearest examples comes when Sean finally reveals to Maya that he lost his job weeks earlier. Now, this is a man already drowning under pressure while trying to care for a mother battling cancer. Yet Maya's reaction feels so irrationally aggressive and bizarrely over the top that the entire scene collapses under its own stupidity. Instead of feeling like a believable emotional confrontation between two desperate people under pressure, the scene plays out like forced soap opera chaos written by people who think screaming automatically equals good drama. Moments like this happen throughout the movie, and they slowly destroy any emotional investment you try to have in these characters. What makes it even more frustrating is that Another Man's Wife would be far easier to tolerate if its characters behaved like actual human beings instead of walking plot devices programmed to make the dumbest possible decisions every 5 minutes. The film constantly relies on the kind of frustrating movie idiot logic where basic communication could solve almost every problem instantly, but the characters keep sabotaging themselves because the script needs artificial conflict to survive. And then there are the endless laptop scenes. Good Lord. This movie somehow stretches what feels like barely 10 minutes of actual story into a 90-minute endurance test filled with repetitive laptop shots, awkward pauses, unnecessary staring contests, and scenes that drag on long after they have already made their point. Characters endlessly type, stare at screens, sit in silence, or loiter around rooms pretending tension exists where there is absolutely none. The pacing becomes painfully exhausting. There are too many pregnant pauses, too many empty stretches of dramatic nothingness where the movie desperately wants the audience to feel suspense, but instead gives them enough time to sit back, think logically for 2 seconds, and immediately realize how easily Maya and Sean could solve most of their problems if they simply communicated like functioning adults. Instead of becoming a gripping psychological thriller about desperation and temptation, the movie slowly turns into a frustratingly pointless lesson in terrible marital communication. A how not to stay together guide starring two self-sabotaging idiots trapped inside a script that mistakes stupidity for complexity. Honestly, the filmmakers behind Another Man's Wife took what could have been a simple but layered psychological drama and transformed it into a mind-numbing cinematic disaster. This premise had the potential for emotional complexity, moral tension, manipulation, obsession, and genuine character study. Instead, the movie strips itself down to hollow melodrama wrapped in artificial glamour and painfully shallow writing. The biggest problem is that the film gives you absolutely no meaningful understanding of who these characters actually are. We learn almost nothing about their personalities, their histories, their flaws, their peculiarities, their desires, or the emotional scars driving their decisions. There are no intricacies, no depth, no humanity. The characters exist as empty mannequins dressed up to look attractive for the camera. All sculpted muscles, flawless makeup, designer clothes, and polished luxury aesthetics standing around in pristine environments that desperately scream wealth, without ever feeling authentic or lived in. These people do not feel real, They feel manufactured, and because the movie refuses to build genuine emotional foundations for its characters, every supposedly dramatic moment lands with the emotional weight of wet cardboard. There is barely any real tension throughout the film. Instead of building suspense, the story crawls from one sparse plot point to another with the energy of a half-asleep soap opera. The pacing is painfully sluggish, filled with scenes that contribute absolutely nothing except stretching an already thin script to feature length. When Maya finally goes to Brendan's mansion for the supposedly fateful weekend, the moment the entire movie has been building toward, what does the audience get in return? Sean jogging, Sean drinking water, Sean standing around looking worried. That is the movie's idea of gripping psychological drama. The film constantly mistakes inactivity for tension and silence for depth. Instead of creating suspense through layered writing or emotional conflict, it fills scenes with empty staring, slow walking, awkward pauses, and characters brooding like they are trapped inside a perfume commercial pretending to be a thriller. And somehow, what follows becomes even worse. The movie sinks deeper into frustratingly illogical storytelling, where characters make decisions with no believable motivation, emotional consistency, or psychological realism. Important developments happen simply because the script demands them, not because the characters organically evolve toward those choices. Everything about the film feels emotionally dishonest. By the end, Another Man's Wife becomes poisonous in the worst possible way. Not because it is disturbing or provocative, but because it is exhausting. It wastes a potentially compelling premise on lifeless storytelling, artificial drama, shallow characterization, and direction that confuses slow pacing with sophistication. What should have been a tense exploration of morality, desperation, and temptation instead collapses into a vapid, frustrating mess with no emotional intelligence, no narrative discipline, and almost no reason to care about anything happening on screen. In summary, Another Man's Wife is a sterile, hollow romantic thriller that fails to establish any real emotional connection with its audience. What should have been a gripping exploration of marital temptation, manipulation, and moral collapse instead becomes an artificial, emotionally vacant experience, populated by lifeless characters, weak development, and almost zero relatability. Set against a backdrop of excessive wealth, glossy glamour, and bizarrely over-curated, museum-like environments, the film feels more like a staged exhibition than a living, breathing story. With the exception of Taye, who at least attempts to bring presence and control to his role, the rest of the cast delivers performances that are painfully flat. There is no spark, no emotional weight, no conviction, just actors going through motions without truly inhabiting the characters they are meant to portray. At its core, the film feels like a diluted, uninspired reworking of the far superior 1993 moral dilemma thriller Indecent Proposal, stripping away nuance and tension and replacing them with predictable beats and empty dramatics. And honestly, the execution is so lifeless and mechanically written that it raises the uncomfortable comparison to the kind of filmmaking often criticized in weaker Tyler Perry-style productions, where dialogue feels forced, emotional moments feel manufactured, and storytelling leans heavily on melodrama instead of substance. In the end, Another Man's Wife is not just boring, it is creatively exhausted, narratively shallow, and emotionally empty. It drags itself across the screen with no real purpose, no tension, and no payoff worth waiting for. The simplest verdict? Skip it. You are genuinely not missing anything of value. And now for my rating. Another Man's Wife scores an annoying 2 out of 10. I'm definitely trashing this. All style, no substance, surface level charm with zero depth, and a story that never truly comes together. Nothing here works, and it shows from start to finish. Behind the mask, we see all. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like, comment, and share this video. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and click on the bell icon for notifications. Also, be sure to follow me on TikTok, WhatsApp channel, and Instagram at Dominus Cinephile for more movie and TV series reviews. Dominus Cinephile, signing out.